What's up, everybody? Maj Toure here. Make sure everybody goes over to solutionaryuniversity.org. We have obviously, you guys know the work that we do at Black Guns Matter and at the Solutionary Center. We're here at the office at the Solutionary Center now. Today, we're going to have a sit down with Judge Joe Brown. He's going to chop it up with us about all things that are going on right now. Hold on one second, guys. I'm actually going to text to make sure he's in. So he'll pop up here shortly. Now, very briefly, I want to make sure that we're giving everybody a backdrop on who the people that come on the show are. Some of you folks may not be aware of who Judge Joe Brown is, his impact on daytime television. You may not be aware of his pedigree as it relates to the law. And when he gets on, I'm going to allow him to kind of like give that breakdown and all that other good stuff. But today we're going to kind of like talk about, I think the central component should be this Kamala Harris situation. Obviously, there are tremendous amounts of questions circulating around Kamala Harris's ethnicity. I mean, obviously, she ran the Indian thing to get one leg up, pun intended. She ran another leg to... you guys get it. And I don't want to say this to make it seem like I'm coming off disrespectful or rude in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling y'all that these are questions that we should always be looking out for. Any politician or public servant that is that level of self-serving where they will switch their ethnicity to appeal to a particular demographic, then abandon that so-called ethnicity when convenient, that speaks to their principles and their character, or lack thereof. And so it's something that we should definitely have a conversation about. But these gun talks, obviously, you guys know that, I'm a Second Amendment advocate and activist. But at the same time, these gun talks need to be conversations around culture and politics, because the culture of the Constitution, freedom, liberty, and things of that nature, those things impact legislation that impacts your Second Amendment rights and things like that. So the conversation around freedom, the conversation around public servants that obviously are more in alignment with the concept of let's get rid of the Second Amendment, as Kamala Harris has been. I mean, if you guys are not aware, she has presented, her own words saying that, if Congress doesn't do something, that she's going to take executive action as the commander in chief, if she was the president, to do something about banning so-called assault rifles, assault weapons, things of that nature. And this is unconstitutional. Obviously, right now we have a Scotus, a more, somewhat conservative Scotus. And that somewhat conservative Scotus is in essence tossing unconstitutional things and supporting constitutional things. However, when we are at a space where we're relying on Supreme Court, which is supposed to be the absolute Hail Mary attempt in conversations that are confusing, we should not get to the SCOTUS and whether they decide to pick up a case or not to recognize if we are, as a nation, our judges, elected officials, and public servants are going to respect the Constitution, which is still the supreme law of the land. If we're relying on SCOTUS to make these decisions, we're putting, in essence, the freedoms that are clearly articulated in the Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Constitution all over. We're putting the freedom in that up to 9 people. And if somebody dies and the president happens to be an extreme leftist and they appoint someone that's extreme leftist, that changes the viewpoint of how Supreme Court judges will interpret the Constitution. And so saying all of that to say, I think it's important when we have a politician or potential public servant like Kamala Harris here for us to listen to people that know not only the law, but have a breadth of lived experience as an attorney and as a judge, and has, a breadth of experience that supersedes all of ours. And so Judge fits that mold, and we're going to get him in here real quick. But before he gets in, let's take a few a few questions and statements. George Cool said a while ago, hell yeah, brother. Maj was good. How are you, brother? Appreciate that. Kim says, hello all. What's up, Kim? How are you? Super Weapons says, Career politicians get no saving grace. A statesman or stateswoman can get shown some grace. I like that perspective. Sigma Carter says, for silent weapons for secret war are required. Their war is covert, and we must become more sophisticated. I agree with that. And our good brother Ryan Jackson says, good afternoon, brother Maj. How's it going? Always well, my brother. Always well. Ryan is one of our most consistent folks. One of the most consistent folks that is on our platform. And Ryan has been a member of the Solutionary Non-Tele group for some time now. I challenge and welcome all of you to join the Solutionary Non-Telegram group. In there, we have a daily activity called the Solutionary 9. It's completely free right now. It's just 9 things that we do every single day to make sure that we are staying on point, whether that's reading, whether that's dry practice. Okay, if you're talking about cert pistols and cert sticks, whether we're talking about doing drills as it relates to firearms, right? Drills, whether we're talking about reading, individual reading and collective reading, our diet, our workouts, making sure we're hitting that goal. And that group is there to make sure that everybody is very, very, consistent and pushing each other and holding each other accountable. If anybody has any questions, please ask the questions now while we're waiting for Judge to tap in so we can communicate a little bit on that sense, because I want, when he gets in, I want every single person to be able to listen. I'll ask him questions. I'll give some perspective. I'll also ask that everybody supports the work with a super chat. If you have certain bigger questions or you want to donate towards the work, please do so. It's very, very important. These classes that we have at the Solutionary Center and across the country are free to all because of your voluntary donations. We do not accept any government funds. We do not... it's just completely voluntary association. If people want to support our work, whether that's Firearms Basics, whether that's Stop the Bleed, obviously you guys know we are serious proponents of being medically prepared. That Stop the Bleed classes, all of these classes at the Solutionary Center and abroad happen because of your voluntary donation. So we're going to get Judge in here in a little quick minute here. Richie Wood says, help us fighting Massachusetts too, guys. Massachusetts is a very anti-gun state. Ironically, Massachusetts being very, very key in the American Revolution is so ironic. It's like all of the places that were key places, Philadelphia, New York, Massachusetts, places that were places of liberty back in those days. Extreme leftists have absolutely converted those places. So Richie Wood says, help us fight in Massachusetts too. The state just passed the biggest gun control bill since the Civil Rights Movement. Super Weapons has said, speaking of health and wellness, what's a recommended shoulder workout for strength and conditioning? Super Weapons, we're going to take that in a quick second, man. Join the Solutionary Telegram group. But without further ado, we're going to add Judge Joe to the stage. Hey, Judge, how are you? Can you hear and see us well?
I hear you. I see you. Everything's good as long as nobody tries to call in, or some of the people that always try to intrude don't intrude. And by the way, my phone is showing right now that there's an unauthorized device that has associated itself with my account. It just popped up again.
Wow.
Big brother / big tranny sis is checking things out. They invade a bit, so I've had a few problems. But here I am.
Thank you, Judge. Before you tapped in, I was just telling folks, I have our audiences, obviously they're Second Amendment supporters, obviously they're freedom and liberty folks, but I think that sometimes people don't fully comprehend or appreciate the level of understanding of civics and the law, and having somebody with a breadth of knowledge in these things as it relates to even the words that we use and phrases and things of that nature. So you being one of the folks that have a serious grasp and handle on that, I wanted to make sure that we shared that with our group, but we also, skew into kind of lower demographics that may not be aware of your impact, not only on daytime television and law and, all of these different things, but could you for a quick second, just kind of give people some of the background, some of the younger folks that need to know exactly who you are and the stamp that you've already made and it's already cemented?
All right, I came out of Los Angeles, South Central LA. We didn't even call it that then. I went to John Muir Junior High School, Manual Arts shortly, and then to Dorsey High. Went to UCLA, played a little football there, played football at Dorsey. I thought that wasn't going to go anywhere. I worked my way through school after getting a scholarship from a certain group that helped out, but not enough. I was a playground director and a substitute teacher in the system. Uh, the late Dr. Clifford Stewart, Grand Master of Martial Arts, Black Belt magazine called him probably the most dangerous human alive in North America for 15 years. He and I were brothers. Also, Dr. Ron Chappelle, another martial arts master. We ran a playground at Trinity Avenue Elementary School. You've heard of two of our students. One is Barry White, the late singer. He was a skinny 12-year-old on our playground. And the other one was a 14-year-old volunteer. You know him as Tookie Williams, and he co-founded the Crips, and we tried to get to him. We got to him, but his mama wanted that check, wouldn't let him get away, so we couldn't get him out of the swamp. He just became the baddest alligator in the swamp. Black Panther Party, Black Student Alliance, Black Student Union. We started the first affirmative action program in the country. And by the way, what we came up with looks a lot like what Justice Roberts wrote in his opinion. It was race neutral, but when you took the objective criteria, it was inevitable that it applied to black folk. We tried to do the thing to preserve rights to carry and be armed in California, but let's just put it this way, for grandstand purposes, some people we couldn't talk out of doing it invaded California's legislative body, armed to the teeth, and 2 weeks later, Reagan signed into law a thing that made carrying long arms armed in public a crime, which it hadn't been before that. And a lot of people got shot who were otherwise trying to keep their community safe, either from thugs or rogue police. So then, let's say, I did a whole lot of things, went to UCLA Law School, did an internship at a DC think tank, got a community lawyer fellowship, got sent to Tennessee, been here for more than 50 years since, practiced poverty law, was with EEOC, was the first black prosecutor for the city, ran the public defender's office, and then in the late 1970s went into private practice handling criminal defense work. I wound up getting the youngest person in the world on a death row, off death row, got his conviction unanimously reversed by the Arkansas Supreme Court. He was 15 years, 2 weeks old when we got a stay of execution 23 minutes before they were supposed to kill him. He was 13 years old and supposed to have killed 3 white folk. One of our grounds for objection that the Supreme Court of Arkansas sustained was an all-white jury. That was back in 1984, 85, and then it went on from there. And I was a criminal court judge, got elected to 2 8-year terms. Everybody covered me. I wound up getting the recidivism rate over a 10-year study period reduced from north of 80% for the state down to going down. It was at 18% dropping when I retired. How long ago? Almost 25 years ago. And it's been one of those things where the whole objective was to try to get things together for the people, to use what was up here for a constructive purpose, to think outside of the box, to not be holding to anybody but the people in general, and to the long legacy that had been left thanks to all sorts of ancestors going through all kinds of changes to get us from cave to condo. So here we are. And I like causing trouble for the damn idiots because I can't stand a punk. And one thing I do not like is a son of a bitch that is too damn weak to figure out how to protect himself and those he's supposed to be responsible for. So I've been into firearms for 71 years now that I think of it. My old man took me to shoot the first time when I was 6 years old. So I've been a staunch supporter of that. And I get my John Wick on every now and then for play and ready to do it for reality. And once or twice I've had to do it on the real deal side. So yeah, I'm in the Second Amendment. And by the way, an explanation on that little historical data. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the common defense. Let's break that down. Yep. When the Constitution was ratified, there was no such thing as police because they had not been invented. That was Sir Robert Peel, Bobby Peel, who invented them when he got chartered to set up what became Scotland Yard. And he invented the police in the 1830s, which was quite a bit after the Constitution was ratified. First police came in Boston and New York in the United States. And prior to that, the only law enforcement was the constitutional officer, at least statewide, a sheriff, which was 1,200-year-old office that came from England, et cetera, the Saxons, the Normans, and all of that continued it. And the sheriff was able to deputize people to assist him when he needed assistance. That ranged from the Sheriff of Nottingham, who was Robin Hood's mythical antagonist, though there really was one, and there seems to have been a Robin Hood. So the people were supposed to be responsible for their own defense, and they needed to be armed and proficient in their weaponry in order to do so. And England distinguished itself from the rest of Europe by arming its commoners, the yeomen, and they had to be proficient at archery, practice at archery so many times a week, and be able to hit the butts, they called them, the targets, at 100 yards with a cloth yard arrow. That was the length of a yard of cloth, about 36 inches with a long bow. And if you had an obligation, the obligation transferred into a reciprocal right. Now, what is the militia? The militia is a term of art. It has nothing to do with a military unit. It was defined at common law as all able-bodied males in a district or a shire or a county from 15 to 60. They were also expected, if they were in good, fit health, to be armed and able to use the arms and be able to go to war or to rise in common defense or to subdue criminality. So that is the term. When you say a well-regulated militia, you're saying a well-regulated body of all males 15 to 60 are to be armed, trained, and ready to use those weapons for a number of things. One of the uses is very seldom mentioned by the popular press, and that is to keep the government honest. We have a system of checks and balances in the U.S. and state governments. And that is, we have a legislative body, which is a branch of government, an executive function, which carries out the instructions delivered by the legislative body to be an administrator. And then we have the judiciary. We have also the federal government that contains those divisions of its institutions offset against the states. And then offset against both, we have the people who, if armed, are able to resist tyranny so that they cannot be forcibly imposed. There has been a grave danger in this country wherein the weak, wishing to maintain their weakness, their perversions, their degeneracies, and their detachment from fulfilling their obligations to the rest of society, they want a very well-armed central government or agency that will too often morph into Big Brother, or in these days go tranny and become Big Sis, and supposedly protect them, but not necessarily resist the temptation to be enlisted in imposing a tyranny.
Yep.
So we have to keep these things in mind as a duty to ourselves, the people we love and we are responsible for, and to the country and humanity. Now, that's it. Let's get on to the subject. What else are we going to deal with today?
Here's the question. You knowing all of that information, right? When did, in your perspective, in this over 7 decades on the planet, in America, being an American, being, going through civics, going through law, being a judge, dropping the recidivism rate. I mean, from 80 to 18 is wildly productive. Where did this switch happen in your mind, Judge? When, and obviously these things happened over time. It wasn't just one day. But what are some of the mechanisms, and what is that recipe for now we go from all of this great law, all of this great history, all of this great system of checks and balances? Where does that change, and what are some of those early mechanisms where, from your perspective, you started to see those switches change from us being men and masculine and having a skill and being able to defend self and knowing those responsibilities in alignment with these supreme laws of these lands? When did that shift happen in your earliest memory?
Okay, my earliest memories, I mean, one of the earliest memories is embraced. I was 5, not earliest, but an early one. I was 5 years old. My mother was a librarian at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. My old man had gone to law school at Howard, but he didn't want to practice law. This was way back in first part of the 1950s. So we were coming back to visit relatives in Jackson, Tennessee, and we went too close to one of these sundown towns too early. And my mother handed me this Coke. She loved her Coca-Colas, little bitty ones, back when. And she wanted to fish around in the glove compartment. So I was holding it on my right knee. And some clowns took 3 shots with a rifle at the car. They didn't lead us enough because they were shooting at the old man, apparently. And we were moving. And that was a year before he took me out to shoot the first time. And a bullet came through the driver's side passenger door in the back, and it shattered the Coke bottle I was holding on my knee. And I was worried that my mother was going to be pissed off because the Coke broke, when I didn't want to be blamed, but she was cool. She said, "Baby, just lie on the floor." I said, "Oh, they're shooting at us," because I talked to my old man because he'd been in the war.
Yeah.
And they put 2 more bullet holes in the car. It was old olive green DeSoto that got war surplus, been used as a staff car. And, what the message was is that because they did not in the Deep South want colored Negroes, now blacks, Afro-Americans, blacks, African-Americans, now blacks, or whatever in the hell we choose to call each other, to be armed and able to resist that, there were a series of laws that were passed to disarm the black race and keep them disarmed. There was this problem with all of the former Union soldiers coming back to the South, and they brought their muskets with them and their carbines with them and the occasional revolver that they'd picked up or acquired. Now, there is a case that went before the Florida Supreme Court in 1936, and right now I can't remember the name of the case, but there is an interesting discourse in one of the concurring opinions. This justice down in Florida said, "I don't understand this." He said, "Why is this law about carrying weapons illegally being applied to this white man? It is clear that the law was set up to deal with the colored exclusively and not whites." And you can see that in some of the decisions that the state Supreme Courts made back when. Now, that was about 10 years before I was born, but it sets the stage because it sort of speaks in writing of what the flavor was. Now, we had this other thing going on, which was an emasculation move brought about by the feminists, and a thing that was also sustained by what we now call the soy boys, the weak guys who got pushed around, and now I suppose they're having revenge of the nerds. And then there was a reaction to what was going on. I know my old man bought a carbine, M1 carbine, and he got it mail order through the mail for $5.60 Yeah. And I remember how excited I was when he was showing me how this thing worked, and I got to go out and shoot it. So I think I was 7 years old then. So you could get stuff like that. And he bought a pistol. He did the same thing, mail ordered the pistol. It was a big old 1917 45 ACP Smith & Wesson revolver that he bought surplus. But in fact, I think I still have it in a safe someplace. But I mean, you could do that. And you had all of these guys who were school teachers, shop teachers, homeroom teachers who had been in Korea, World War II, and some of the older guys had been in World War I. So we had this respect for manhood. And here's this guy that, you know, we loved war stories. He'd been in the trenches or the foxholes or in the ice. And you just did not mess with one of these guys when he told you something to do. We had to have our shoes shined, trousers creased and ironed and clean, shirts tucked in, hair cut, and be neat and orderly and understand respect, because that's all they would tolerate. And we weren't going to go gainsay these guys because they weren't to be played with.
Yeah.
So with that kind of attitude, there was this kind of thing. And then you started getting this stuff out on the West Coast and the East Coast, where everybody was just afraid of everybody. And you did not want certain things to develop. So you started getting this gun control. And then it became people control. And then in the late mid 60s, you started getting this coalition of those who hated men. That was the lesbian crowd, some of them. Those who hated that they weren't men, that's the feminist crowd. Those who hated that they weren't strong men, that was the beta boy crowd. Those that hated they weren't normal men, that was some of the gay crowd. And then you had those who hated men because they thought men were the cause of war. Man, war is a bad thing, man. We got to do something about all this violence, man. It's about love, man. If you just just get stoned, man, and do love, man, it'd be all right. Well, see, everybody else in the world wasn't doing that, and Ho Chi Minh damn sure wasn't. And that was a little episode with the Nam that was reacted against, but they took over communications. They already had the entertainment industry. They took over news. They got politics, and they subsumed politics by getting the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party had invited all of the colored in, Negroes in, then blacks in, who had been previously Republican, because they were trying to get support that they were losing so they could keep up Roosevelt's New Deal. And they had become identified with rights, but the wrong kind of rights. Now, right now, I'll fast forward and just say something briefly on that. The Republicans used to damage the Bill of Rights because they were deep off into law and order. They're beginning to understand what the Bill of Rights is all about now. But the Democratic Party has been stomping on the Bill of Rights because it gets in the way of their license. See, they don't want truth to be put out there. They want feelings to be protected. And that has absolutely nothing to do with First Amendment free speech. And it is always something that comes up with Second Amendment considerations. You F up, you don't raise your children right, they're completely out of control. You've got social and educational and economic policies that favor sissyism, so nobody knows how to deal with a bully anymore. Nobody's encouraged to do it. Everyone's supposed to be protected. There's no competition. It's all about entitlement and participation ribbon stuff. Yeah. And when you have this kind of thing, what you wind up wanting to do is to keep anybody from being able to do for self. And that's what this whole gun control thing is a movement to come at fascism from another angle. Now, I had a Soviet professor who was a visiting professor emeritus from the University of Moscow back in the mid 60s at UCLA. I became her teaching assistant. And she always used to say, "Comrade, your country is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation." Not from some jackboot wearing, goose stepping uniform thugs, but from, she put it, pink panty wearing, long haired beatniks who don't know what they are and who are afraid of everything and would gladly impose the worst methods of fascism on their country to protect themselves and their, shall we put it, degenerate ideas. So we have this fear of people that has been generated and worked on, and it's actually not the weapon, not the tool that is to be worried about. It's the lack of character. You're not teaching these boys manhood. You're not teaching them to deal with that predatory beast that is instinctive, that got us from cave to condo, where we eat damn near anything we feel like eating rather than something eating us. So we don't deal with that, and that ravening beast is in there. It doesn't go away, and if you don't teach it how to deal with itself, it'll leap out when you least expect it, especially if somebody's been punked out, can't deal with bullies, and he just explodes because he can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what's in common with every one of these freaks that has gone out and shot up the hallways, or paradoxically driven through the hood and shot up the hood, is they lack manhood.
Yeah.
And they did not learn how to deal with adversity, and damn near every one of them could not deal with bullies. And that would range from that freak who was up on the tower at a Texas university back in the mid 60s all the way up to the clown that was trying to take out Trump. So it is what it is. And the problem in the hood is we have a lot of people who hate themselves. And one of the ways I reduced recidivism is I had damn near everybody I let out on bond or put on probation psychologically analyzed, and we found there was a very high level of suicidal ideation. In other words, people didn't just go boom, put the gun to their head. They might not have the nerves, so they did the drugs, and it wasn't about getting high. It was about dying, trying to die, and they knew it. Or it was suicide by cop, which you see a lot these days, or you see a whole lot these days that's unrecognized, suicide by neighbor. In other words, you provoke your neighbor into doing you the favor of taking your life. And if you take his in the process, or the failed attempt at the provocation, then so much the better. You feel, redeemed. I took another MF out, blah, 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 blah. And
so, Judge, let me ask you this, Judge. Are we, in your perspective, again, almost 3/4 of a century of lived experience? This ain't just theory from your perspective. A lot of the things that you've already lived through, I low-key hope that I may never have to, prepare to, if need be, because I believe we're in that, good times create weak men phase of that cycle, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel that this is something that our nation, who honestly, I feel sometimes like we went from being Leonidas in the 300 to now we are almost like Xerxes in the Persian Empire in the movie 300. Is there a way from you in your lived experience that our nation, our people, our communities, manhood, masculinity can come back to the direction that we needed to come back into? Or, brutally honest, are we too far gone into the empire? Are we just on the decline and we just waiting for the lights to go out?
Oh, here's what we're doing. We are repeating history. We're right where Great Britain was in 1924, 23, 25. In other words, this was the biggest empire the world had ever seen. The Royal Navy ruled the seas. They were mighty when it came to economics and mighty when it came to military matters, but they were effete. And they wound up losing it because they did not have what it took to maintain their manhood to continue in that position. We're doing
Are we too far gone?
We're not quite, because what's going on is a propaganda thing to mislead. The majority of the American public is appreciative of masculinity and femininity. They understand the need for the balance. The girls want the boys want the girls. They got a rough edition of Boys and Girls 101 A and B. That's not spread much, but the mainstream media, which is holding something of a monopoly on communications, is running a propagandistic game on us. So we think that masculinity, femininity, manhood, womanhood, and childhood are dead, and we should give up hope. If we buy into this lie, then we will give up hope, and we will stop trying because it's too late. And even if it actually were, it's not going to be for humanity, because look at what the People's Republic of China is now doing. Look at what resurgent Russia is doing. Look at what India is doing. Look at what Pakistan is doing. Look at what Nigeria is about. And they're about to become the 4th largest nation in the world, and one of the wealthiest, should be within 10 to 15 years. And these people are not into what the United States is currently slanting toward, which is why this election is very important, because it is a pivotal one. This is when we get to that point in the slope down to the rabbit hole where it is too difficult to get back up, and it will be all over. But we haven't gotten there yet. You remember that movie Avalanche, when they're sliding down to the tip of the glacier to go over the cliff, and somebody's pickaxe digs in at the last possible moment and everybody's saved? That's where we are right now. We've got to dig that pickaxe in before it's too late. You let these SOBs get one more 4-year term and we are screwed as a nation. Our manhood will be put on a precipice where it is on a thin tightrope, and it's not going to be sustained. This is our last chance. And if we don't get this, I seriously suggest you encourage your children to take Mandarin Chinese in school so they can learn to speak the dominant language in 25 years. Now, I really suggest that. Take Russian too.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of leadership, Russia isn't communist anymore. It's straight up and down capitalist. And Business Insider reports that Mr. Putin's net worth is about $120 billion, which would make him one of the richest people on the planet Earth. And some of the richest people on Earth are now in Russia. I remember this professor I was talking about back in the 60s, 56 years ago. She gave me a paper, and she had it translated, and it was written by Lenin, 1919. And it said Russia must eventually adopt democratic processes. It's not ready yet. It will not be ready until there are no significant numbers of remaining Russians with a living memory of their enslavement under the czars. That is most likely to occur in 1990, the last decade of this century, and it will be a matter of glasnost and perestroika. And what did we get Gorbachev announcing in 1990? We're now ready for glasnost and perestroika. It wasn't Ronald Reagan did anything. It was the people on a plan.
Right.
And they also, in this paper, that's Lenin, not they, he said, our closest rival, America, will not be our rival by the time we have established ourselves, after Russians have become familiar with their own personal authority, their own enterprise, their own ingenuity, their own military prowess, and their own diplomatic skills, because they will cut themselves off at their own knees by what they do, trying to cater to a small but increasingly enlarging number of people that are susceptible to, as he put it, certain perversions. And that's where we are right now. If you unman the country is defeated. It's never been the women on the walls of the fortress or at the gates trying to hold off the invaders or the wild beasts or anything else. It's the men, and you don't bring the women in until it is extreme. Now, one of the methodologies of slavery that I studied when I was with this DC think tank consisted of this admonition to slave owners. It was never, ever let the black male run anything on your plantation. No matter what your respect may be or your love may be for your favorite pet Negro, be he your favorite carriage man, a footman, a valet, or butler, always use one of the girls that you have trained up as a bed wench. And if they're successful in that, when they get gray hair, make them a mammy and have the mammies run the Negroes on your plantation. That is the only way for you to succeed. And if you do this, and it went on it further, that's just where the famous phrase came from. If you do these things, Negroes will make slaves of themselves and their posterity for the next 400 years. And that was an utterance by the William Lynch in a 1709, I think it was, pamphlet I was studying. And it wasn't the Willie Lynch letter. It was a bunch of them he wrote in a bunch of pamphlets. The letters were just inquiries as to whether you want me to hold basically a workshop on how to raise slaves for fun and profit.
Okay.
So it is an interesting thing, he said, in conjunction with slavery. He said there's an absolute requirement to keep the white race armed and capable. This will offset you against the northern industrial clans. And you must at all costs keep Negroes, particularly free Negroes, from being armed, as they will be able to resist their continued enslavement.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing in there when you look at it in historical context. But this whole problem about where we're going, we're at the balance point. One or two more steps in the other direction and we're gone. But it's not too late to struggle to get back up and go elsewhere. This is not the way to go.
Correct. I want to give a few shouts to the folks that have been given super chats. Listen, guys, all of our classes at the Solutionary Center, whether that's rifle training, whether that's basic pistol, whatever it is, all of our classes at the Solutionary Center and around the country are free to all because of your voluntary donations. Before Judge tapped in, I said to you guys know that we do not accept any government funds. We don't even apply for the grants because a lot of those come with stipulations, and we want to remain independent. We want to remain serving the people, and we do this by your donation. So Renee Martinez gave $10 saying, here's a little something. Sorry, it's not much, but I hope it helps the cause. One, if you gave, we appreciate it regardless. So thank you, Renee. We got our brother Ryan Jackson with a $15 super chat. He says, I appreciate the content. Ryan is one of our top students or top performing students at Solutionary University. He's taken the Firearms Basics class, the Civics class, and the Understanding Imminent Threat class. So thank you for that, Ryan. As well as we got, I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to say Bites for the last few letters. Zuby the other day, then Judge Brown. I wasn't intending to learn something this week, but y'all messed up my plans. I'm glad. If your plan was to not learn nothing this week, I'm glad I messed your plans up. I'm glad we were able to do that. You should be learning stuff every day, brother. So just giving some shouts to all of the folks that are giving super chats. Guys, listen, if you can, let's see if we can get to $1,000 in super chats while we have Judge on, especially if you want to ask Judge some questions, because I kind of just want to tap in here and there and let Judge go. And switching gears a bit, Judge, all of the things that you said right now are eerie to me because as a student of history and as, you know, like the Sankofa bird, looking backwards to know where we're going in the future, this whole being led by women, and I'm not saying that, you know, I want to be very, very clear. I'm doing this for contextual purposes. I am in no way, shape, or form saying this to be offensive to the feminine energy or women in general. I say that because I know some people try to tap in. I don't owe anybody that explanation, but I do it to be a little bit more courteous. I am not a fan of being led by women. It's not my thing. It's just I'm not into it. If I'm communicating with my woman for some insight on some things that she may have value on from a feminine and intuitive perspective, 100%. But as the leader in my relationship, I have to make those final decisions, and we're going to live and die by my decisions, and she's going to understand that. My point in saying this is, when you say these things, from most of our listeners or viewers weren't even alive yet, okay? When you say these things, it's eerie to me because we're going into an election season, and I usually don't buy into this election is a very, very dire one thing. I usually don't, because I can tell sometimes that it's a fear tactic, right? But I don't feel the same way as it relates to this one, not only just because, the assassination attempt that nobody's talking about just magically on the president or the front running candidate for the presidency, but the way that they eluded the democratic process to get Kamala Harris, who clearly has slept her way up to the top and has not been the shining example of so many other women that have worked very, very hard and are very, very knowledgeable in their respective lanes. So when you say these things, I'm kind of like, it becomes eerie because this looks like we finally got one, the Indian or black woman, whatever she chooses to identify, to lead the Negroes. And I'm watching all of the Negroes within a week in that PR machine that were just saying she just disappeared for a whole presidency. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying, oh, she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So that scares me a little bit. What is your take on, I'm somewhat familiar, but this Kamala Harris situation, to me, that does not have 70 years of lived experience. When you say that, that looks like that you didn't get the ice pick at the edge of the cliff. We going over. So what's your take on her? Do you think she's even, and again, I might just be politically naive, but I don't think that she's politically astute enough to run the position. But from your perspective and having that much experience, what do you think, Judge?
She's not smart enough to run that position. She didn't demonstrate a stellar performance as a student at Howard, which is not one of the top universities in America. And I say that in context with my old man, 70 plus years ago, was an undergrad and a law student there. She did not go to a top tier law school in California. She went to one just above the cutoff line between accredited and unaccredited. She hasn't done anything particularly stellar in what she's doing. She's also suffering from early onset dementia, which is a little bit scarier than what's going on with Biden. He's in his 80s, she's 60. And I've seen this happen. That's why she goes around in a circle. Tomorrow is so important because it is today, and today being tomorrow also. We have tomorrow. Like, what did you say? She doesn't know, and it's a cognitive block where they can't think through what they're talking about. And they tend to go in body language inappropriateness with the words they're saying. And they also tend to, when they get discomforted, they do something that is a nervous manifestation, which is this cackle she gives all the time, like a hyena. Now, back to what you said, I am not following any woman. I will listen to advice, but as I have been saying for decades, a proper man who's earned the position gives direction, and his woman, if she is smart enough to be his woman, gives advisement. So I give guidance, she gives advisement. I'm a fool if she doesn't know how to offer me advisement, and I listen. Well, I'll say that. I'm a fool if she offers good advisement and I don't listen to it. She's a fool if she doesn't know how to give good advisement. It's like seduction. You trying to get over and get in the panties. You just can't say, baby, drop them drawers, unless you and her on a different kind of thing. You got to seduce. They want you to do something. They have to learn how to work a man thing too. But we don't get boys and girls one-on-one. Now, that said, it's a case of what is your character? Are you being taught to be a brave somebody, or are you being taught to be a punk when you get raised, not only by your parent or parents, but by the society in which you find yourself? Now, I'm a judge, and I would just happen to be the last person on that James Earl Ray case. And did he or did he not kill Dr. Martin Luther King? The answer is no, he did not. The answer is the FBI recruited the two-man hit team from the Quantico Marine Sniper Training School, which is right across the tarmac from the FBI training facility located on the same base. The FBI supplied the ammunition, 5,000 rounds of hand-loaded ammunition using Spear and Sierra bullets. It was subsonic. It had a epoxy resin filler in the case, so you could reduce it to a subsonic velocity. The weaponry involved was an XM21, which was a blueprinted M14 with a special stainless barrel produced by the Army Marksmanship Unit with a rate of rifling twist of 1 in every 11 1/4 inches. The standard M14 had a rifling twist of 1 in every 12 inches. And the ballistic characteristics expressed by the projectile pulled out of King's body reflected it was fired by a weapon that had a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 11 1/4 inches. And in 1968, the only way to get that was to have a custom gunsmith make you such a barrel, or to be privy to one of the 63 barrels that the Army Marksmanship Unit had made and installed 62 on experimental rifles. The FBI got 5 of them on invoice late December 1967. And in late April 1968, when the Justice Department ordered them to return those weapons to the Defense Department, the FBI claims it lost one. And I have the inventory search that they conducted with the serial numbers of the returned 4. And I have the initial invoice with the delivered 5. So the missing one is, in fact, the serial numbered one that killed King.
Wait, Judge, you have these?
Yeah, I have them various places. So I have the invoice with the 5,000 rounds of ammunition with the specifications, and I have the serial numbers for the XM21s that were delivered in late December 1967 and the 4 that were returned in late April 1968. Now, the shots was fired from the fire station, not the bushes, which are right under the window for the flop house bathroom. And one thing's interesting, the flop house bathroom window never was subject to being opened wide enough, so they didn't get intruders breaking into the damn thing. And the rifle couldn't have been fired out of it. The other thing is on some experiments we conducted, because of the subsonic nature of the bullet that was fired, along with a very large suppressor on the M21 produced by Psionics, there is an interesting phenomenon in that the report of the rifle shot reflects off of the front of the Lorraine Motel, and the echo is cast right back to that location, which is why everybody was pointing over there. So is what it is, and I could go into the details on that, but I do have that information, and it is something that's been published a time or two that nobody realizes the impact of. So there are some very dangerous things that have been going on in this country that are gotten away with because the public is so ignorant of firearms based on what they see on television and the movies, particularly the older movies, which are even less authentic than the current ones. Now, if you want to get off from this, let's talk about some tactical situations that would come up to anybody who is going armed within their rights to be armed, according to the latest Supreme Court cases. I have to say something about that, and I also bring into context the experience I had when, as a judge, a sitting judge, there was a break-in by 5 people in a shootout in my home. 30-some shots got fired. This has been 1997, somewhere thereabouts. And see, if I hadn't been proficient, I'd be dead now, not talking to you, instead of saying what I'm saying. Now, follow the law, check with a criminal lawyer, a good one, not necessarily somebody that's advertised very heavily, but somebody with a good reputation of delivering. Read up on it yourself, find out what the law is in your state. But generally, one, you do not shoot anybody to wound, because you're not entitled to shoot to wound. You are entitled to kill if you have the right on your side by operation of law, which usually is when someone assaults you under such circumstances and in a fashion that causes you to have a reasonable belief that you're in jeopardy of suffering death or serious bodily harm or injury. You may resist, even to the point of using deadly force. So you're entitled to kill that person. Now, you'd probably have to answer to it later, but that's your defense. It's an affirmative defense of self-defense or defense of a third party. Now, if you're entitled to kill them, there's no point talking about wounding. First off, very few people can shoot that well, even the cops, which, by the way, is why you see police shoot somebody 8, 9 times, 6 times, 4 times, is because unlike the movies, when you shoot somebody with a pistol, you don't necessarily see an immediate reaction unless you get a central nervous system hit or you do something about breaking down somebody's support limbs mechanically. In fact, a lot of people, when they are in a gunfight, first thing they ask if they think they're a survivor is, did I get hit? Because they don't even feel it.
Yeah.
And the real deal is people who survive gunfights will tell you that when they shot the guy, they may have killed him, but they didn't see any reaction. Right. I've been standing near somebody and watched them get shot right in the back with a snub-nose 38 using 110 grain Supervel ammunition, 38 special. The person's aorta was destroyed, but the person set up and fired 6 shots back at his assailants, hit one of them in the back, but the .357 bullet deflected off of the scapula and did not penetrate the torso of the person he was shooting, and his killer got away and he died not long afterwards. Seen somebody get shot straight in the chest. 10 minutes later, he was propped up on one elbow groaning. There was a case in my courtroom, wound up being criminally negligent homicide. You can see it on video. The guy got shot dead center. He had on a light tan sweater. It was in color, and you could see the little small red holes start spreading. He got shot in the chest. All 4 chambers of his heart got destroyed. What did he get shot with? A .45 ACP. It was federal hydroshock, one of the most effective .45 ACP rounds, destroyed all 4 chambers of his heart. By the stopwatch, this transpired in the next 15 seconds. He told his assailant, he said, "Fool, you killed me. What's going to happen, man? Damn. Who's going to take care of my children?" And he walked 7 yards over to a motorcycle and sat on the seat. "Man, you done killed me, man. Who's going to take care of my kids, man? Damn. I can't see, man." And that was 10 seconds into him being shot. And then 5 seconds later, man, and he slides off the motorcycle. He faints, never wakes up. So in 10 seconds, Usain Bolt could run 100 meters. And that's a whole lot of damage that could come back to kill you in those 10 seconds. Or the guy wasn't far from when he got shot right in the back, gun pressed up against his back, and got his aorta destroyed by a very rapidly expanding 110 grain bullet. And he set up and he didn't keel over until he had fired 6 shots from a 357. So, you know, this is not something like in the movie, bam, they don't do that.
Right. You in our Understanding Imminent Threat class, which I recommend everybody take, we go over some of those things because first and foremost, as you said, Judge, this has nothing to do with what Hollywood is trying to portray it to be, number one. Number two, again, cannot stress enough, everybody should be taking a stop the bleed course. Know how to tie a tourniquet, know how to seal a wound, know how to pack a wound, know how these things happen, and know how to do these things. And we go over some of these things in our Understanding Imminent Threat class. Judge, I want to wrap up here, but I want to obviously, from your perspective, I just want you to leave people, and obviously, guys, everybody that's tapping in right now, this will be recorded. Please, guys, help us get the likes up. You know, we're going to stay on for a little bit longer, but get the likes up, as well as share this all over the place, as well as do a super chat. Do a super chat if you can, because, again, all of the classes at the Solutionary Center and around the country are free because of your voluntary donations. So if you got a question for Judge, please do the super chat. We'll highlight you and all that other good stuff. What is something that you would say? Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Judge.
One last, if I'm anticipating you, one last comment on this, and I'll be quiet, but it's this. The U.S. Supreme Court has held over and over again that the police have no obligation to protect you unless you are in their physical custody.
Yes.
Now, who do you think is going to protect you when they aren't around? And do you really want a police presence that is so ubiquitous that they're always around anyway? So if you are a real man or you are a concerned woman, you will learn how to protect yourself and those who depend upon you. So learn how to get your John Wick on. And by the way, that's not a bad thing to watch. It's a little bit glammed up, but if you take it in segments, it's not unlike a real gunfight actually comes out. It's a fight, not a target practice moment. Now,
right. Judge, what would you say to the people that are actually in agreement with you? Because I'm 1,000% in agreement with we treading some you know, some real thin ice. You know, to the people that agree with that across the country, what are maybe some action item lists? Obviously, personal protection, taking classes, getting trained, being informed, pushing back against the narrative, obviously, as it relates to firearms and your Second Amendment or human rights to defend self as codified in the Second Amendment. But what would you say are a few steps to those young men and young ladies that want to push back against that narrative so we don't slide over that cliff? What are some things that they can do and practical steps from your perspective?
Learn what you're talking about. Hands-on. Get yourself a good military-grade pistol. Get yourself a good military-grade or effective modern carbine. Get yourself a 12 gauge, and I would suggest Mossberg 500, 590 with an 18-inch barrel to start off with. You might want a Remington 870, and there are a few other ones, Beretta, Benelli, etc. make them. Get yourself a good
little setup, nice little setup.
Yeah, get your equipment together. Now, read all you can. Never get hyper confident because accidents await your commission. Get your finger off the damn trigger. You do not put the trigger on there. You do not play with loaded firearms. You do not point them at anything you do not wish to destroy. All of the rules of safety apply.
And politically, what are some steps that those folks can do outside
Now,
of the personal protection, politically.
I'm going to go to that way. Don't
Okay.
vote for a son of a bitch that wants you disarmed for some American edition of an effeminate Gestapo to come pay you a visit. All right? Be careful who you vote for. It ain't all about skin. If you're talking about you want to be able to protect yourself, there is no reason in hell for you to even consider a Kamala Harris. No reason. And by the way, it's a pragmatic concern. I find it rather insulting that after all of what our ancestors have done for this country, not one of us with those kind of connections to the past has ever been in a high office like president or vice president. It's been Obama, who has no ancestral connection with American black folk. It's been, even if she wasn't lying about it, even if she was black, Kamala Harris has no black American context on which she can rely when it comes to this country's history. She wasn't there through her ancestors in slavery. She wasn't there through Reconstruction. She wasn't there through Jim Crow. She wasn't there through segregation. She wasn't there through what went on in the 50s and the 60s to finally end it. She was not one of those people. Her parents were interlopers from abroad who came in and birthed her in San Francisco. She has no connection. So why are you so damn happy? And all of the woke folk out there that claim they won't have any association with black folk from the Caribbean, the Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica, or Bermuda, or anything like that, or Nigeria, or Kenya, or South Africa, or Ghana, or wherever it may be. Why in the hell do you want to go deal with somebody that doesn't even have that kind of connection with where you're coming from? And it is not good for you. It is not guns that cause the problem. It is character. And I will say this, as a defense lawyer, I participated as lead counsel or primary counsel in 42 first-degree murder cases where the death penalty was demanded. Not one of my former clients is on death row. And most of the time, the murder weapon was not a firearm. It was a hammer, a butcher knife, a screwdriver. A baseball bat makes a very interesting weapon.
Oh, the judge. Did we lose Judge? Damn. Did we lose Judge, y'all? Judge, hey, solutionaries, comment if y'all can see Judge. He just disappeared on my end. But you know what? Listen, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Oh, all right, there he is. Judge, you there?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
You here, Judge? We see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Oh boy.
You can hear us?
Testing.
Yes, can you hear us? Judge. Damn. Can you hear us, Judge?
Oh man.
Well, we can see him. You can hear us, Judge? Testing.
Shit.
Yeah, he can't hear me. All right, so I'm going to remove Judge and have him come back in. So Judge will probably tap back in a second. And if he doesn't, guys, let me be very, very clear. There was a lot of information given in this scenario, okay? We can see him and hear him, but he can't hear us, or he can't hear me. But if he taps back in, we'll do it that way. But if not, I'll end the stream, and I'll have Judge on for part 2, because we a little over an hour and 8 minutes now at this point anyway. That was 1,000% in my humble opinion, big brother. But nonetheless, guys, this is the type of information that we have to tap in. That whole, like, young people against the elders, elders against the young, you know, all of that type of weirdo vibe, you know, this community against that community. It's not what we need. And these types of gun talks, you know, where we have conversations about politics, where we have conversations about firearms, we have conversations about civics and an action item list in the direction of where we need to go. is what we want to continue to bring. So we're going to tap out here, guys. Thank you, every single person, for supporting with the super chats and things of that nature. Guys, please make sure, share this all over the place, as well as we need 1,930 more donors at the $100 level. If you got some value from this today, I'm definitely going to have Judge tap back in again, right? If you got some value from this one today, though, please, guys, support the work. If you got $100 to donate, somebody type it, givesendgo.com/solutionary, and I'll put it up on the screen. If you can be one of those 1,930 donors at the $100 level, do so. We'll buy the Solutionary Center. We'll keep moving forward. Please do that. givesendgo.com/solutionary. If you want motivation and want support of a community of people that are going to hold us accountable to 9 daily activities, we have the Solutionary 9 group. Go on my Instagram, or if you're seeing this on Twitter or wherever you're seeing it, just comment the word Telegram, and I'll make sure you get the link directly to that. But we have to make sure, as AG Front just said, we have to make sure that we're building community. So those are the 2 ways that you guys can help, and obviously get some merch. On any of our social media platforms that you're watching this on, comment the word merch if you want a link to the shirts and the gear. Comment the word give, and we'll send you the link directly to GiveSendGo link, givesendgo.com/solutionary. We'll send that directly to your DM. That word is givesendgo.com/solutionary, and all of the links are in the bio. Okay, guys? Support the work. Be one of those 1,930 donors at the $1 level. I see Judge pop back in, and I'll bring Judge back up so we can have him give the final word. Judge, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. They tapping in. Take us home, Judge. Tell folks what they can do, where they can follow you, and I'll make sure I get this out to every single body on our email blast.
Okay, you can get me at Judge Joe Brown TV on X. Okay. And also, if you like barbecue, there it is, right in the back. Judge Joe Brown Barbecue.
Absolutely.
JJB BBQ. And you add a .com to it. You can order it online, or you can get it on Amazon. And if you have Amazon Prime, the delivery is free. And you can get the stuff in 2 days from your point of order. Now, Amazon has the sauce. We also have links, hot and mild, smoked and raw, chicken, beef, and a veggie thing, Beyond Meat. We also have the sauce is spicy or mild. We've got seasoning and rub, spicy and mild, and we are hooking up with a winery, so we will have grape juice, a little fortified, and also we hook up with Poppy's whiskey, which is a hellified smooth bourbon. And on a final thing, take up hunting. Go put the sights on something, squeeze the trigger, and watch it drop if you want to get into self-defense, because this exercise of your predatory capacity is important. It does no good if you find yourself in a situation that demands self-defense when you don't have it in you, or you haven't discovered it in you to act. So go take something down and see what that feels like. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find it interesting when you do it, and keep that state of mind inside your head when you deal with your life, and understand it's not just about you. It's about a group of people you owe something to, those who you provide for, those who you protect, and those who you feel responsible for. So it's not only about you, it's about your family, your friends, your associates, your city, your state, and your nation. So let's help us protect ourselves from ourselves.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Judge. I appreciate you. I'm gonna put all the links in the bio as well. I appreciate you, Judge.
All right.
All right.
Now, too bad nobody got a chance to ask anything.
Yeah, we got Judge. You got to come back. You definitely got to come back.
Anytime. I've been shooting for 71 years.
Yeah.
And I can give you a few tricks that you're not going to find in any current books or magazines. And
100%.
That said, read a lot.
Read a lot.
Guns and ammo, guns, shooting times, American Rifleman. Subscribe to those. Join the NRA. Join the organizations that you're promoting. Contribute. Support what you're doing, because it's your right to keep breathing. Whereas somebody else might be saying, I don't care, or I'm afraid to make sure that I keep breathing. All right.
100%. Thanks, Judge. I'll talk to you in a bit.
All right.
All right. Peace.